friends, and to see some young people. Welcome, it's really good to see you. And indeed, I find it very encouraging now how many young people are actively involved in the pro-life movement. I used to think I was young once, but you really are an encouragement to us, so a big welcome to you. It gives me great pleasure to follow Lord Alden and his characteristically thoughtful and appropriate speech commending our guest, Magnus MacFarlane-Barrow, here this evening, and together with Lord Alden and indeed all of you, to present Magnus with the Westminster Award. As we've heard, and of course it's always a disadvantage when you're speaking last, that something has been said before, but as I was listening to it, I thought there really is no harm in repeating some of Magnus's endeavours. Because as we've heard, he started his charity efforts many years ago with his brother Fergus in 1992, during what many of us remember as the Bosnian or the Balkans War. And as we've heard, the breakup of Yugoslavia led to a dire humanitarian situation in which many, including children, were left without food or adequate shelter. And out of compassion, he's a big man who has a huge heart within that frame, and out of that compassion for those afflicted by this horrific conflict, these two brothers, Magnus and Fergus, both fish farmers, as we've heard, in their mid-20s, began a local appeal in Scotland for food and blankets. And this was successful, as we've heard. They collected the food and blankets in their parents' garden shed, and then drove all the way to Bosnia in a jeep filled with what they'd received, and delivered that to those in need. And the wonderful thing was that when they returned, they found that even more donations had come in whilst he'd been away. And so at that point, Magnus chose to take a year out from his job to continue collecting and delivering aid. And that's been quite a year, hasn't it? Because you've never stopped since then. The donations kept coming in, and so Magnus took on the project full-time, and he turned it into a charity which was initially named Scottish International Relief. But now, as we've heard, it's more recently been named Mary's Meals. It's a lovely, lovely name, isn't it? And in those 25 years, since the charity started, by the end of this year, Mary's Meals has become a school feeding charity, working, as we've heard, with some of the world's poorest communities to set up programs which enable children to go to school, gain an education which can offer a route out of poverty. And I know as patron of a school in Tanzania how important that food is to help the children benefit from their education in the school which I've had the privilege of supporting now for some years. All the children are given a little pot of a maize-type substance at the start of the day, without which many of them will simply fall asleep, tired, exhausted and listless during the day, and never really benefit from that education. So the combination of the sustenance and the education is something which really can provide a route out of the poverty that so many of those children suffer, and give them a hope and a future. And as we've heard, by 2015, the number of children served reached a milestone of 1 million, and it's now, Lord Alden said 1.3. I thought it was very humble the way that you corrected him and said, look, it's 1.2, but it's a lot. It's a lot. So this quarter century of work by Magnus and his team really exemplifies what the Westminster Award aims to celebrate, which is the valuing and active safeguarding of human life. The central ethical and judicial concern of both the all-party Parliamentary pro-life group, which is my privilege to chair, and I'm delighted to have our group's vice chair, Rob Flello, MP, here tonight too. Our central concern, as well as the central concern of the charity Right to Life, who together founded this award, those two organisations, our central concern is that human life has a right to live, a right to life. That's the legal right of every individual, not to have one's life forcibly, coercively ended, at whatever stage it is, as Lord Alden has said, from the very beginning, from conception to its final breath, to the very end. And whether this ending be by direct killing or by the pressure that's applied, and we see this so often in other countries now, at the latter stages of life, whether that pressure, sometimes subtle but often not so subtle, to end one's life is the way that that threat comes, whether it's by direct killing or by pressure to end one's own life. That is wrong. That is wrong. Life is God-given, and it is for God to determine when it will end. And that principle, that this right to life, I'm getting to it. I can sense that this right to life is so wanting you to have this award, Magnus, that this right to life is rooted in wider moral concepts of yes, the natural law and natural rights, but also of God-given rights, God-given priorities, the priority that every individual in God's eyes is special and has a meaning and a purpose. My favourite expression, apart from biblical quotes, is no insignificant person has ever been born. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful way of reminding ourselves that every individual was meant to be here, was planned to be here by our Lord and Saviour. And so it ought to be the right of every person to receive the sustenance they need to live, to have that life. The basic right of every human being to the essential elements of life are part and parcel of their right to life itself and fundamentally respecting their human dignity. And so by Magnus' efforts in leading Mary's meal, many people, many children have been delivered from hunger and from malnutrition, as I say, given a hope in the future. And so Magnus has, by these compassionate charitable accomplishments of over 25 years of serving the poor, he has safeguarded their fundamental right to life, their fundamental right to life as some of the most vulnerable people on earth. It's a privilege to thank you today. You richly deserve our heartfelt praise and merit the Westminster Award for Human Life, Human Rights and Human Dignity. And at this point, my notes say in red, at this point, take the award from where it will be placed. So